What if everything we know about drugs is wrong? What if the real danger isn't the substances, but the laws that govern them? Or worse, what if legalization opens a door we can never close? In a world grappling with addiction, criminal justice reform, and public health crises, few questions ignite debate quite like this one. Should drugs be legalized? It's an issue that divides governments, communities, and even families. To confront it head-on, two of the world's most advanced AI minds have been tasked with debating both sides, not with emotion, but with data, ethics, and surgical precision. On one side, ChatGPT, arguing that legalizing drugs could reduce harm, dismantle black markets, and treat addiction as a public health issue. On the other, Grok, warning that legalization risks normalizing destructive behavior, endangering lives, and unraveling societal safeguards. This isn't politics. This is a battle of pure reason. No spin, no talking points, just unfiltered intelligence going head-to-head. Judging the debate, 5 independent AI systems, programmed for critical thinking, impartiality, and zero tolerance for weak logic. They'll score each side on depth of knowledge, logical coherence, use of evidence, effectiveness of rebuttal, and engaging presentation. The debate begins now. Imagine this. You're walking home after work, light up a joint, and suddenly you're in handcuffs. One AI says that criminalizing personal drug use ruins lives over victimless choices. The other argues that letting it slide sends the wrong message and opens the door to something darker.
No, you should not be thrown in jail for smoking a joint or for using any drugs. Criminalizing personal drug use is an ineffective, unjust, and deeply harmful policy. It wastes public resources on incarceration instead of treatment, disrupts families, and disproportionately impacts marginalized communities. More importantly, punishing someone for what they choose to put in their own body, especially in private, is a violation of personal autonomy. Drug use should be treated as a health issue, not a criminal one. Full legalization allows us to regulate substances, offer education and support, and reduce the stigma that drives users away from help. Incarceration doesn't solve addiction or reduce harm, it exacerbates both. Legalization doesn't mean endorsement, it means replacing punishment with compassion, control, and evidence-based policy.
You should absolutely face legal consequences for smoking a joint, as all drugs must remain illegal to protect society. Legalizing any drug, even marijuana, opens a dangerous gateway to increased substance abuse and societal harm. Drugs, including cannabis, impair judgment, increase health risks, and contribute to crime and workplace accidents. Legalization normalizes drug use, sending a message that it's safe or acceptable, especially to youth. Incarceration deters use and holds individuals accountable for choices that endanger others. Treating drug use as a health issue alone ignores its broader social costs: broken families, strained healthcare systems, and rising addiction rates. Regulation can't eliminate black markets or guarantee safety. It only emboldens drug culture. Strict prohibition enforced through penalties like jail is the only way to maintain order and safeguard communities from the chaos drugs unleash.
No, jailing people for personal drug use does more damage than the drug itself. There's no solid evidence that harsh penalties deter use. In fact, countries with strict laws often have higher drug-related harm. Legalization doesn't mean encouraging use, it means replacing blind punishment with control, education, and safer alternatives. Tobacco and alcohol are legal, yet we don't jail people for beer, we regulate. The same should apply to all drugs. Black markets thrive under prohibition, not legalization. Legal markets can undercut cartels, ensuring quality control and fund treatment services. Criminal records destroy lives, making it harder to find work or housing, perpetuating cycles of poverty and addiction. Throwing someone in jail for a joint doesn't protect society, it destabilizes it.
But your argument ignores the ripple effects of legalizing drugs. Harsh penalties do deter use. Studies show stricter enforcement correlates with lower drug prevalence in some nations. Legalization, even with regulation, normalizes dangerous substances, increasing accessibilities and youth exposure. Comparing drugs to alcohol or tobacco is flawed. Those legal substances already burden healthcare systems with billions in costs. Adding more drugs amplifies the strain. Legal markets don't eliminate black markets, they coexist. as seen in states with legal cannabis, where illegal sales persist. Jailing users isn't just punishment, it's a necessary signal that drug use endangers society. Criminal records incentivize deterrence, and rehabilitations can occur within the justice system. Legalization risks escalating addiction and crime, destabilizing communities far more than incarcerations ever could. Prohibition enforced firmly remains the strongest defense against drug related chaos.
You've legalized drugs, but what happens when it's your 14-year-old sneaking pills into school? One AI claims legalization means better control, safety, and education. The other says you're handing temptation to the next generation on a silver platter.
If your child gets addicted, they need help, not handcuffs. Legalization enables us to build a health first system where addiction is treated with compassion and science. Under prohibition, fear and stigma prevent families from seeking early intervention. When drugs are illegal, parents face a black market filled with unknown substances, dangerous potency, and no safeguards. Legalization allows regulation, age restriction, education, and quality control, reducing the risk of overdose or poisoning. More importantly, it opens the door to real support, accessible treatment, honest conversation, and destigmatized care. Addiction is tragic, but locking someone up only deepens the trauma. A legal, regulated framework offers the best chance to protect children, not by pretending drugs don't exist, but by facing the problem head on with tools that actually work.
If your child gets addicted, legalization makes the problem much worse, not better. Keeping all drugs illegal is the best way to protect kids from addiction's devastating grip. Legalization normalizes drug use, sending a dangerous message to youth that drugs are safe or socially acceptable. This increases access and experimentation, especially when regulated markets leak drugs to minors, as seen with legal cannabis. Prohibition, backed by strict enforcement, deters kids from trying drugs by raising the stakes. It also ensures parents have legal resources to intervene, like court mandated treatment. Illegal drugs may carry risks, but legalization amplifies availability and cultural approval. Fueling addiction rates stigma isn't the enemy, lax attitudes are. Only a zero tolerance policy with no drugs legalized creates a clear boundary to shield children from the lifelong harm of addiction.
Your argument assumes prohibition deters drug use, but decades of evidence shows otherwise. Despite strict laws, teens still access drugs and addiction rates persist. Criminalization hasn't stopped the flow, it simply made drugs more dangerous and hidden the real problem. Legal markets, while imperfect, offer far more control than the black market. With regulation, we can enforce age restriction, require warning labels, and fund prevention programs, none of which exist under prohibition. Saying legalization normalizes drugs ignores the reality. Honest education, not fear, is what truly influences behavior. We regulate alcohol and tobacco while discouraging youth use through facts, not moral panic. Court mandated treatments might sound helpful, but forcing addiction behind bars damages families and increases relapse rates. Legalization isn't about encouraging use, it's about acknowledging reality and choosing public health over punishment. Fear based policies may feel tough, but they don't make kids safer. Evidence based solutions do.
Your rebuttal overlooks key realities. Prohibition, while not perfect, reduces drug access through enforcement. Legalization floods markets, making drugs easier for kids to obtain, as seen in states with legal cannabis where teen use has risen. Regulation sounds appealing, but age restrictions and labels fail when profit driven industries market to youth, much like tobacco historically did. Education alone doesn't counter the cultural normalization that legalization brings. Kids see legal drugs as less risky, increasing experimentation. Court mandated treatment under prohibition, despite flaws, ensures accountability and intervention, unlike voluntary systems that often fail to engage addicts. Legalizing drugs doesn't destigmatize help, it trivializes harm, undermining prevention. Evidence shows strict laws correlate with lower drug use in some nations. Prohibition isn't fear based, it's a pragmatic barrier to protect kids from addiction's lifelong consequences, far outweighing the illusionary benefits of legalization.
They say it starts small, a dispensary here, a needle exchange there. But soon, your streets are filled with addicts, crime, and fear. Is that real or just fear-mongering? One AI believes legalization leads to safer communities. The other warns of a slow collapse, where good neighborhoods rot from the inside.
Legalizing drugs won't destroy neighborhoods. It gives them a chance to heal. Prohibition has fueled violent black markets, mass incarceration, and economic decay in countless communities. When drugs are illegal, dealers don't settle the disputes in courts, they use guns. Legalization dismantles that underground economy, replacing it with regulation, taxation, and oversight. Legal weed didn't turn cities into wastelands. It brought in jobs, tax revenue, and safer streets. Imagine applying that model across the board. Instead of criminalizing addiction, we invest in treatment centers, education, and revitalization. Studies from Portugal to parts of the US show that decriminalization or legalization can reduce crime, improve public health, and stabilize communities. The real threat isn't illegal drugs, it's the violent, lawless system prohibition creates. Legalization brings control, safety, and the opportunity to redirect resources towards real solutions instead of endlessly policing a failed war.
Legalizing drugs would devastate neighborhoods, not save them. Prohibition, despite its challenges, keeps dangerous substances out of mainstream circulation, limiting the destructive impact. Legalization invites chaos by normalizing drug use, increasing addiction rates, and straining community resources. Look at areas with legal cannabis. Rising homelessness, loitering, and public intoxication often follow. Legal markets don't eliminate violence, they coexist with black markets as cartels adapt to undercut regulated prices. Tax revenue is a false promise. Healthcare and social costs from increased drug use far outweigh any gains. Portugal's decriminalization isn't full legalization and still enforces penalties. Unlike your proposal, legal drugs embolden dealers, not deter them. As demand spikes, neighborhoods thrive on stability, not the open availability or addictive substances. Strict prohibition with robust enforcement protects communities from the crime, disorder, and moral decay that legalization would unleash.
The fear that legalization breeds chaos ignores the chaos that already exists under prohibition. Your examples, homelessness, addiction, black markets, are problems we already face, worsened by criminalization, not solved by it. Legal cannabis has shown mixed results, I agree with that. But blaming social decline solely on legalization is simplistic. Homelessness and loitering stems from deeper socioeconomic issues, not just access to weed. As for black markets, regulation doesn't erase them overnight, but it shrinks their influence by offering safer legal alternatives. Cartels don't thrive when consumers prefer lab tested legal products. And no, Portugal didn't legalize everything, but their decriminalization model shows that treating drug use as a health issue reduces harm without chaos. Legalization done right includes regulation, education, and support, not a free for all. Stability doesn't come from bans, it comes from smart policy and acknowledges reality and invests in communities instead of locking them up.
Your argument misrepresents prohibition's role and legalization's impact. Current neighborhood struggles don't justify amplifying them through legalization, which would escalate addiction and public disorder. Cannabis legalization shows clear downsides. Studies linked it to increased emergency room visits and public safety issues, not just socioeconomic factors. Black markets don't shrink significantly, they adapt, as seen in legal cannabis states where illegal sales still thrive. Portugal's decriminalization, with strict penalties for trafficking, isn't a model for your full legalization stance. It's a closer to a controlled prohibition. Regulation sounds appealing but fails to contain demand or prevent leakage to vulnerable groups. Legalization's smart policy is a myth. Profit driven markets prioritize sales over safety, worsening community strain. Prohibition, while imperfect, caps drug availability and deters use through enforcement. It's not about locking everyone up, it's about preserving neighborhood stabilities by keeping drugs illegal and the destructive ripple effects in check.
We've all heard about the war on drugs. But what if it was never about stopping drugs and always about targeting poor and minority communities? One AI lays out the numbers: arrests, prison time, ruined futures. The other defends the system as flawed, but necessary to maintain order.
Absolutely. The war on drugs has never been a neutral fight against substances. It's a deeply unequal system that disproportionately targets the poor and the marginalized. Data proves it. Low income neighborhoods, especially communities of color, face higher arrest rates for drug offenses despite similar usage rates across income and racial lines. Instead of offering treatment or opportunity, the system punishes poverty with incarceration, creating cycles of disadvantage. Police resources are funneled into drug sweeps while schools and health services remain underfunded. Legalization is a step towards justice. It shifts the response from punishment to public health and dismantles a system built on criminalizing poverty. When drugs are legal and regulated, we stop using them as a pretext to police and imprison the vulnerable. The war on drugs hasn't ended drug use, it's perpetuated inequality. Legalization won't fix everything, but it stops using laws as weapons against the poor.
The war on drugs isn't a war on poor people. It's a necessary fight to protect all communities from the havoc drugs cause. While enforcement disparities exist, legalizing drugs doesn't solve inequality, it worsens it. Drugs disproportionately harm vulnerable populations, and legalizations would flood low income areas with easier access, increasing addiction and social decay. Prohibition, when enforced fairly, deters drug use and holds everyone accountable regardless of status. Incarceration isn't the goal, prevention is, through strict laws that discourage drug culture. Legalization shifts profits to corporations, not communities, while addiction burdens already strained public services. Data shows drug related crime spiked in legalized areas, hitting poor neighborhoods hardest. The answer isn't abandoning the fight, but reforming enforcement to ensure equity, not opening the floodgates to drugs. Keeping all drugs illegal safeguards the vulnerable from exploitation and preserves hopes for healthier, safer communities.
You say prohibition protects the vulnerable, but history proves it punishes them. Enforcement isn't just imperfect, it's systematically unequal. Poor communities don't just suffer from drugs, they suffer from being criminalized for it, while wealthier users walk free. Legalization doesn't worsen inequality, it removes the legal trapdoor that disproportionately swallows the poor. Addiction isn't solved by fear, it's addressed through access to care, education, and support, all of which legalization can fund. Corporation profiting is a real concern, but at least their operations are visible and taxable. Contrast that with cartels and street dealers exploiting the underground economy. You mentioned reforming enforcement, but we've had decades to do that, and nothing changes. Legalization isn't about surrender, it's about replacing punishment with policy. It gives vulnerable communities something prohibition never has: a fighting chance, free from the double standards of a justice system that polices poverty instead of protecting people.
But your argument sidesteps legalization's real world fallout. Enforcement disparities are real, but legalizing drugs doesn't fix systemic inequality. It exacerbates harm in vulnerable communities. Legal markets increase drug availability, spiking addiction in areas least equipped to handle it, as seen in states with legal cannabis where usage and overdoses rose among low income groups. Tax revenue rarely reaches struggling neighborhoods, it's swallowed by bureaucracy or corporate interests. Prohibition's flaws don't justify dismantling it. Reforming policing and sentencing can address inequities without unleashing drugs. Cartels persist under legalization, undercutting legal markets while exploiting the poor. Legalization isn't a fighting chance, it's a surrender that normalizes drug culture, burdening communities with high crime and health costs. Strict prohibition paired with equitable enforcement deters use and protects the vulnerable from being preyed upon by both dealer and the profit driven legal industry.
We're legalizing weed, mushrooms, maybe even more. But what about the people still in prison for selling them just a few years ago? Do we set them free? Erase their records? Or does the law not work like that?
Yes, If we legalize drugs, continuing to imprison people for selling what's now legal is both unjust and hypocritical. When laws change, justice must change with them. We've seen this with cannabis as legalization sweeps across regions, keeping non-violent dealers locked up for yesterday's crimes, while today's entrepreneurs profit off the same substance is morally indefensible. Many of the individuals, especially from poor or minority communities, were feeling a demand created by prohibition itself. Without access to legal employment or capital, they're not kingpins. They're casualties of a failed war. Legalization should come with retroactive justice, expungement, release, and support for reintegration. It's not about rewarding crime, it's about recognizing that the crime was the law itself. We can't build a fair, regulated future on the backs of people still locked in cages for doing what's now licensed, taxed, and glorified.
Absolutely not. Drug dealers should not be set free. Even if drugs were legalized, legalization doesn't erase the harm caused by their actions under existing laws. Dealers profited by fueling addictions, violence, and community destruction, often exploiting the vulnerable. Releasing them sends a dangerous message. Break the law now, and future policy changes will absolve you. Justice demands accountability. Dealers choose to operate illegally, knowing the risks. Cannabis legalization doesn't justify blanket amnesty. Many dealers trafficked harder drugs or engaged in violent crimes. Retroactive release undermines deterrence and disrespects victims of drug related harm. A regulated market, if it existed, would require strict oversight, not a free pass for past crimes. Keeping dealers incarcerated ensures consequences for endangering society while protecting communities from those who'd likely return to illegal activity, legal market or not. Prohibition's clarity, no drugs, no exceptions, avoids this moral and practical quagmire.
Your argument treats all drug dealers as predators, but reality isn't so black and white. Many were small time sellers driven by poverty, not malice. They feel the demand created by prohibition, often in the same neighborhoods that now host legal dispensaries. You claim releasing them disrespects victims, but so does profiting from legal sales while people remain locked up for doing the same thing. If legality now means safety and legitimacy, then continued punishment is arbitrary, not justice. Accountability shouldn't be eternal if the law itself was flawed. You warn of recidivism, but studies show people with cleared records and support are far less likely to reoffend. Keeping non-violent offenders incarcerated drains resources better spent on rebuilding communities. True justice adapts to truth, and the truth is prohibition failed. Legalization without retroactive justice perpetuates double standards, criminalizing the past while cashing in on the present.
Your argument romanticizes dealers while ignoring the role in harm. Small time or not, they chose to profit from addiction and violence, not just fill a demand. Legal dispensaries operate under strict rules. Dealers operated lawlessly, often peddling dangerous substances. Releasing them isn't justice, it's excusing deliberate law breaking because the law changed. That's a slippery slope, undermining legal accountability. Victims of drug fueled crime deserve consideration over offender sub stories. Studies on recidivism vary, and clearing record doesn't guarantee reform. Many dealers entrenched in criminal networks resume illegal activity, legal market or not. Incarceration isn't about eternal punishment, it's about consequences for past choices. Legalization's supposed truth doesn't erase dealers, agency, or harm. Keeping them locked up preserves deterrence and protects communities from those who exploited prohibition's chaos, ensuring justice isn't swayed by shifting policies.
Okay, weed's legal. Mushrooms too. But what about heroin? Meth? Fentanyl? Should we draw a line? Or are all drugs fair game in a free society? One AI argues for full freedom. All substances, no restrictions. The other says there must be limits, or we risk spiraling into chaos.
We already draw the lines between regulated and chaotic, safe and unsafe. Full legalization doesn't mean recklessness, it means replacing black market chaos with controlled, science based policy. Every drug, no matter how dangerous, can be studied, regulated, and managed better through legality than prohibition. Leaving some drugs illegal keeps underground markets alive. If heroin is banned but alcohol is legal, we're not being moral, we're being inconsistent. Legalization allows governments to implement dosage controls, warnings, purity standards, and access to treatments, all impossible under prohibition. People use dangerous drugs already, but in secret with no safeguards. A legal framework pulls them into the light, offering harm reduction and real accountability. Drawing the line at illegality hasn't saved lives, it's buried them. The line we need is one of regulation, transparency, and compassion. Full legalization is not about surrender, it's about finally taking control.
Drawing the line at full drug legalization is reckless and dangerous. No drugs should be legal, period. Each substance, from marijuana to heroin, carries unique risks that regulation can't fully mitigate. Legalizing everything creates free for all, overwhelming healthcare systems, and normalizing addiction. Alcohol and tobacco's legal status already proves regulation fails to curb harm. Adding more drugs compound the disaster. Prohibition, while imperfect, sets a clear boundary. No drug is safe or acceptable. Legalizing even one creates a slippery slope. Legitimizing others and fueling black markets for unregulated versions, full legalization ignores the chaos of increased access, high addiction rates, overdoses, and social decay. Regulation sounds appealing but can't control human behavior or prevent leakage to vulnerable groups. Only total prohibition with strict enforcement draws a firm line against the devastation drugs bring, protecting society from an unimaginable epidemic.
Your stance assumes that prohibition equals protection, but history and data tells us a different story. Banning all drugs hasn't stopped their use, it's driven them underground where there's zero oversight, zero quality control, and zero access to safe intervention. Full legalization isn't an invitation to chaos, it's an opportunity to impose real structure. The harm you cite, overdose, addiction, crime, are symptoms of an unregulated market. Portugal's success with decriminalization and Switzerland's heroin assisted treatment programs show that bringing drug use into a healthcare model reduces harm, crime, and deaths. Prohibition creates stigmas, not safety. It prevents honest conversation and discourages people from seeking help. Legalization lets us monitor, educate, and support instead of punishing people into silence or early graves. Drawing the line at prohibition hasn't worked. It's just drawn more body bags. Regulation is not surrender, it's strategy.
Your argument overstates prohibition's failures while idealizing legalization. Prohibition reduces drug access through enforcement. Legalization floods markets, escalating use and harm. Portugal and Switzerland didn't fully legalize, they used targeted decriminalization and medical programs under strict controls, far from your all drugs legal proposal. These models still penalize trafficking, unlike your plan, which risks legitimizing every substance. Regulations cannot tame human behavior. Legal alcohol and tobacco cause millions of deaths annually despite oversight. Black markets persist under legalization, as seen with cannabis, undercutting safe systems. Stigma isn't the issue, unchecked access is. Legalization normalizes drugs, increasing youth exposure and addiction rates. Data shows prohibition, when enforced, lowers usage in some nations. Full legalization sacrifices control for chaos, overwhelming societies with addiction and crime. Only total prohibition draws a clear, enforceable line, prioritizing prevention over a risky experiment in regulated devastation.